Me 27F pretty much built my whole identity around spotting how the patriarchy seeps into literally everything, not even controversial. If you actually read theory, it's like realizing society comes with an instruction manual and most people just ignore it. My life is basically designed to avoid cis, hat male nonsense wherever possible. Friend circle, queer women and non-binary people only academic focus, feminist cultural analysis career path. Also feminist cultural analysis, whole life kind of arranged around that lens. And honestly, it works. My relationship especially felt like proof that love could exist without all the gross power dynamics baked into straight culture. My girlfriend Lena, 26F graphic designer. We've been together just over 3 years now. She's basically my entire world. When we first met, she had just crawled out of a long run of terrible relationships with men. The usual depressing lineup. Guys who never listened. Guys who dominated every conversation. Guys who had the emotional maturity of a middle schooler. Same story, a million women have, she's bi, which I'll admit made me a little cautious. At first felt like a potential loophole where patriarchal conditioning could sneak back in, but I saw something in her like this spark that had been dulled from years of performing for men's approval. And I genuinely think I helped her rediscover it. I showed her what an equal partnership actually looks like. Communication instead of competition. Support instead of emotional labor. Falling on one person, our first year together, honestly felt like watching someone wake up from a long nap. We'd watch movies and I'd pause every few minutes, point out the male gaze, or how a scene failed the Bechdel test, or how the female character only existed to motivate the guy. She'd sit there with these huge fascinated eyes, like she was seeing the whole world differently. Wow, I never thought about it like that. Before those moments were incredibly satisfying, felt like I was literally helping free someone's mind. She'd tell stories about her old boyfriends, and I'd help reinterpret what happened. It wasn't just, he was kind of a jerk. It was, you were dealing with normalized misogyny inside heteronormative dating expectations. Huge difference once you frame it systemically instead of personally. It gives you power, takes the blame off the individual woman, and exposes the structure behind it. Lena really started changing over time. She chopped her hair shorter, started dressing more authentically for herself, with a little guidance from me, steering her away from stuff. Clearly designed for the male gaze, she even called out her dad during Thanksgiving, once for making a sexist joke. I nearly burst with pride. Our life together felt perfect. Small 2-bedroom apartment plants everywhere. Shelves full of bell hooks, and Audre Lorde weekends meant farmers markets, indie art galleries, or hosting little wine nights with friends. We'd sit around venting about politics and culture, and how exhausting the world can be. It was like living inside this thoughtful little bubble safe, stimulating emotionally balanced Lena, always seemed so happy in it. Sometimes she'd look at me with this soft, admiring expression. "You're so smart," she'd say, and I'd laugh and tell her, "I'm just saying what's obvious if you pay attention." I was the theorist, the anchor, she was the creative heart, the artist. It worked beautifully. Her bisexuality eventually stopped feeling like something relevant. More like an old chapter in a book she'd already finished. She hadn't shown interest in a guy in 3 years. Occasionally we'd joke about it. "Remember when you thought guys with acoustic guitars were attractive?" I'd tease. She'd groan and bury her face in a pillow. Please don't remind me, I was basically a different person. Back then we'd laugh about it because we both felt like we had evolved past that stage. Our relationship felt advanced, like we had figured something out. Most couples never do. The first crack was tiny, so small I almost ignored it. About 6 months ago, Lena got a message on Instagram from some old college acquaintance, a guy named Brian. She showed it to me casually. "Hey Lena, haven't talked in forever. Saw your work on the Prism Studio page. Looks incredible. Hope life's treating you well." Immediately my internal alarm started buzzing. "Who's this?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Oh, just Brian. We had the same design seminar, senior year. Really nice guy. We used to hang out a lot." I asked to see his profile, scrolled through it myself, and immediately felt exhausted. Profile photo, huge grin while holding a giant fish. Of course bio said something like, civil engineer, hiking addict, proud dog dad. His feed was exactly what you'd expect. Mountain selfies, group photos with us identical-looking dudes at breweries, random gaming, clip the most aggressively ordinary masculinity. Imaginable, it looked like a parody account. "He seems extremely basic," I said, handing her phone back. She shrugged. "He's just a normal guy." "There's no such thing as just a normal guy," I explained gently. Normal is a cultural construct every man participates in. Patriarchal systems, whether he realizes it or not. Sometimes the ones who seem nice are the most insidious because the system hides behind that. She nodded, but not with her usual enthusiasm. Instead, she was already typing a reply. "Hey Brian, wow, it's been ages. Thanks. That project was fun. Hope things are good with you." A small flicker of irritation popped up in my chest. She didn't really need to encourage the conversation. After that, they messaged occasionally. Nothing huge, memes, articles, random memories from college she'd show me. Sometimes I tolerated it, but couldn't help making little comments. "Oh great, another Marvel meme. Does he have a personality beyond pop culture? Or just be careful. Lena, too much interaction with people like that can subtly renormalize problematic viewpoints." She'd laugh it off. "It's just texting. We live in completely different cities anyway." I tried to brush it aside, but it felt like spotting a roach crawling across an otherwise spotless kitchen. One tiny intrusion from the outside world. This random male presence creeping into my carefully curated environment, and I couldn't exactly squash it without looking unreasonable. Then, about 2 months ago, Lena told me something while we were making dinner. "Brian is actually moving here for a job." I paused mid-chop with the knife. "Oh, that's something?" "Yeah," she said casually. "He asked if I'd want to grab coffee sometime, once he gets settled and catch up." My face must have given away exactly what I was thinking. She immediately noticed. "What?" she asked, tone already sharpening. "He's my friend, a friend who suddenly pops back into your life and just happens to be relocating here," I said slowly. "That's a pretty textbook pattern. Guys rarely reconnect out of pure friendship. There's usually some angle involved. He's probably trying to pull you back into the same dynamic." "You escaped? Pull me back into what?" She frowned. "Are you seriously hearing yourself right now? He's someone I knew in college 5 years ago. You're acting paranoid." "Paranoid?" That word hit me wrong. I've spent years studying gender dynamics, reading the research, analyzing how power structures operate. This wasn't paranoia, this was pattern recognition. I'm just being realistic. I said, "You're the one being naive here. I don't want to watch you get hurt. Or worse, manipulated by Brian." "Manipulated?" She shook her head. "He's probably the least manipulative person I know. He's just solid. That word made my eye twitch. Solid sounded like code for dull, traditional masculinity wrapped in politeness. I didn't buy it for a second. The conversation spiraled from there, our first real fight in over a year. Usually our disagreements were calm, almost academic debates. This one was not. That this was an actual argument. She accused me of trying to control who she talks to. I told her she was ignoring internalized misogyny and walking straight into a predictable trap. Voices raised, both of us defensive. Eventually we just went to bed angry. The whole apartment felt wrong, like the protective bubble around our life had popped. Few days later, she still went to meet him for coffee, came home a couple hours later, and immediately I noticed something. She looked lighter, more relaxed, like she'd had a genuinely good time. And honestly, it irritated me. "So, how was the reunion?" I asked, did he outline his long-term plan for dismantling the patriarchal system? He benefits from, my sarcasm was not subtle. She ignored the jab. "It was nice," she said. "We just talked. It was easy. That word stuck in my head. Easy relationships are usually the ones running on autopilot social conditioning. What Lena and I had wasn't easy. It was deliberate, intentional, built through communication and awareness. Easy sounded lazy. They started hanging out more after that. At first once a week, then sometimes twice. She'd go to a climbing gym with him, or he'd help fix little things around her car. She'd been complaining about. I hated how normal it all sounded. Every time she came back, she'd tell me little stories. Brian was telling me about this new game from that studio that makes those hard fantasy games. He thinks I'd like it. "Oh, really?" I said so. "Now we're getting into hyper-violent male power fantasies. It's literally just a video game," she replied. "It looks fun." Couple days later, she actually downloaded it. I walked into the living room one night and saw her completely absorbed in it. headphones on controller in hand, biting her lip in concentration, while fighting some giant monster on screen. She didn't even notice me. At first, I stood there with my arms folded. She finally looked up, saw my expression. What? Nothing, I said, just observing how quickly masculine media colonizes leisure time. She slowly pulled off her headset, let out this long, tired sigh, the kind that comes from deep in the chest. Can you please just stop for like 5 minutes? Can you just be normal for once? Normal. Again, that word kept coming up. Normal is exactly the issue. Lena, I said, normal is how systems of oppression stay invisible. She rubbed her forehead. Maybe I'm tired of every single thing being political. Maybe I just want to play a game, because my friend recommended it, and it's fun. He's not your friend? I snapped he's a vector, an influence after that. I started watching everything more closely. If she couldn't see what was happening, I'd have to prove it. So, yeah, I started snooping. I know how that sounds, violating privacy, but in my head, I framed it as protecting her necessary intervention. One night, when she was in the shower, I checked her phone, went straight to her messages with Brian. I expected to find something obvious, flirting love, bombing needy texts, something I could point to as evidence. Instead, it was painfully boring him. You free to climb Thursday, or, yeah, probably around 7 am, cool. See you then. Another message him, found that Swiss typography book you mentioned at a used shop, grabbed it for you, sir. Wait, seriously? That's awesome, thank you him. No problem, see you Thursday. That was it, no manipulation, no weird undertones, just normal interaction. He remembered a random book she mentioned weeks ago and picked it up for her, thoughtful, and somehow that made me even angrier, because this was the most dangerous kind of tactic. The nice guy camouflage slowly building trust before the trap closes. If I was going to snap Lena out of it, I needed help. So that weekend I arranged a kind of intervention. Invited our friend Zoe over. Zoe's even more politically radical than I am. The plan was simple: guide the conversation in a direction where Zoe and I could gently steer Lena back toward clarity. We're all sitting in the living room with wine. I casually bring up allyship. Been thinking a lot about how men perform allyship lately. I said how some guys memorize feminist language but never actually give up any power. I glance at Lena while saying it. Zoe jumps in immediately. Exactly. There's a difference between saying you support feminism and actually redistributing your privilege. A lot of dudes just fake it to seem progressive, especially when they want attention from women. I look at Lena, right? You've seen that before with guys. You dated Lena, just stared into her glass, quietly. Yeah, I guess seemed like the perfect opening, like the guy you've been hanging out with lately. I continued this Brian guy, he presents as harmless and helpful. But what is he actually doing beyond that? Is he calling out his male friends when they say sexist stuff? Is he donating to feminist organizations? Is he actually doing the work, or just benefiting from the system while pretending to be nice? Or is he just going rock climbing and playing video games? I said, because that's basically passive support of the status quo. Lena slowly set her wine glass down on the table. Very calm, almost too calm. His sister runs a women's shelter. She said apparently he volunteers there. Every other weekend, helps fix their computers and does maintenance work. They can't afford to hire someone for the room. Went completely silent. Zoe and I both just stared at her. My brain basically locked up. That information did not fit anywhere in the model I had built. He does what? I heard myself say he doesn't talk about it. She shrugged. I only found out because I asked why he couldn't hang out last Saturday. He said he doesn't like bringing it up because it feels performative. My entire argument collapsed in real time. Zoe looked like someone had unplugged her, the usual confident political energy. Just gone. Brian had somehow neutralized the entire critique without even being present. I felt heat creeping up my neck, that prickly feeling you get when embarrassment hits you all at once. Lena calmly lifted her glass again, took a slow sip, watching me over the rim, and for the first time in years, her expression wasn't admiration. It was pity. The rest of the night was painfully awkward. Conversation limped along for another half hour. Then Zoe suddenly remembered she had something early the next morning and left. As soon as the door closed, Lena turned toward me. You need to stop, she said quietly. This obsession is getting ugly, and honestly, you're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? I felt anger explode in my chest. I'm trying to protect. You see that he's clearly playing some long strategic game to get close to you, and you're falling right into it. That's how these guys operate. They find a vulnerability and they exploit it. What vulnerability? She asked, her voice dangerously steady. Your past relationships, your conditioning, your bisexuality. The words slipped out before I could stop it. The ugly thought I'd kept buried finally surfaced the second it left my mouth. I knew I'd crossed a line. Her expression changed instantly, like watching something crack down the middle. She didn't yell, didn't argue. She just looked hurt. Then she stood up, slowly walked into the bedroom, and shut the door. I stood there in the living room, with my heart hammering, realizing I had seriously screwed up. The next 2 days were awful. We barely spoke, moved around the apartment like strangers sharing the same haunted house. The silence was unbearable, worse than any fight. At one point, I tried to apologize, stood outside the bedroom door. Look, I said I shouldn't have said that. I was just scared. I love you. And watching this situation unfold is making me panic. Her voice came through the door, quiet and muffled. It's not a situation, it's a choice. My choice. I didn't fully understand what she meant by that. The next afternoon I came home from campus after giving a lecture, walked into the living room, and froze. There were boxes everywhere, cardboard boxes stacked near the couch full of her clothes, her sketchbooks, her art supplies. My stomach dropped like a rock. Lena was sitting on the sofa, staring at the boxes. "What's going on?" I asked softly. "I'm moving out," she said. Without looking at me, the words didn't make sense at first. "What?" No, we can fix this. I'll stop with the Brian stuff. I promise we can go back to normal. We can go back to how things were." She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were red and puffy. "We can't," she said, "because it was never real." "What are you talking about? We were great together." She shook her head slowly. "You were great, you were perfect, and I was your perfect student, your little project. You didn't love Lena. You loved the idea of rescuing Lena, of shaping me into your ideal feminist partner." My whole body went cold. "That's not true," I said automatically, "isn't it?" she asked. "When was the last time you asked what I wanted without already deciding the correct answer for me? When was the last time you let me enjoy something without analyzing it like a case study? I can't live inside a theory book anymore. I can't constantly worry whether my favorite music is problematic, or whether laughing too loud makes me complicit in something." The room felt like it was tilting. "So that's it? You're just giving up on us, on everything we built. We didn't build it together." She said, "You built it, and I just tried to survive inside it, and it's suffocating me." Then she dropped the final bomb. "I'm staying with Brian for a while, until I figure out my own place." The sound in my ears turned into this roaring static like standing next to a jet engine. "You're leaving me for him?" I managed to choke out for a man. "I'm not leaving you for him," she said as she stood up. "I'm leaving for myself. It just happens that he sees me, the real me, not the version you wanted me to become." Then she twisted the knife deeper, and yes, we're together. Now that was the moment I snapped. No calm intellectual breakdown. No measured reflection. Just pure animal rage after everything I did for you. I shouted, my voice ripping out of my throat. "I saved you. I pulled you out of that pathetic world where women bend themselves into shapes for mediocre men. And now you're just running right back to it. Are you? Out of your mind?" I started pacing around the room, grabbing my hair. "You're betraying me. You're betraying our whole community. All women. You'd rather be some guy's accessory than an equal partner in an actually revolutionary relationship. It's pathetic." She just stood there watching me, sad but completely unmoved. I wasn't reaching her anymore. She was already gone. The anger kept building until I couldn't contain it. I started grabbing things off the coffee table, a stack of my books, Judith Butler, Andrea Dworkin, bell hooks, and hurled them against the wall. "This is what you're throwing away," I yelled. "Actual knowledge, actual understanding of the world, actual liberation." For what I shouted some guy who owns a fishing rod and spends weekends playing Call of Duty. The books I'd thrown were scattered across the floor, pages bent and fanned out like wounded birds. Lena looked at the mess, then back at me. "It's not about the books," she said quietly. "It's about how you use them like weapons," before I could even respond. There was a knock at the door. The door opened a second later, and there he was. Brian standing awkwardly in the doorway. He looked uncomfortable, sad, even not smug. Not victorious, just a regular guy who had shown up to help his girlfriend move her stuff. He didn't say a word to me, just looked at Lena. "Ready?" he asked softly. She nodded, tears finally spilling down her face. She grabbed her purse from the table, walked toward the door, never looked back at me once. Brian stepped inside, picked up 2 of the boxes stacked near the couch, grunted slightly under the weight as he followed her out. He glanced at me one time. There was no triumph there, no smug satisfaction. Just the same thing Lena had looked at me with earlier, pity. God, I hated that pity. Then they walked out, the door closed with a quiet click, and just like that, they were gone. I stood there for a second in the wreckage of my perfect apartment. Then my legs gave out. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor and started crying. Not even because she was gone. Not at first. It was something deeper than that. It felt like my entire understanding of the world had just collapsed. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. The woman is supposed to choose liberation. She chooses the sisterhood. She doesn't choose the man. She never chooses the man. The next few weeks were a blur. I did what any freshly dumped leftist academic does. I went online. I started posting long, vague threads on Twitter about ideology, about betrayal. One thread read, "Reminder that bisexuality can sometimes function as a gateway for compulsory heterosexuality. Watching someone you love de-radicalize and return to comfortable oppression is heartbreaking." That tweet alone got like 2,000 likes, hundreds of retweets. My replies filled up instantly. "Stay strong, queen. You deserve better." She was never truly committed to the cause. This is why I'll never date bi women again. Too risky. The patriarchy is everywhere. Solidarity, comrade. Every notification felt like a hit of validation. See? I wasn't crazy. People understood. My community knew what had happened. I leaned all the way into it. Wrote a long essay for this small online feminist journal. Kept the details anonymous. Of course, presented our relationship as a case study in ideological backsliding, how a politically aware woman can still be pulled back into heteronormative structures. The article did well in my little academic corner of the internet. Lots of praise, lots of people calling it insightful. I became the wronged intellectual, the woman whose enlightened relationship had been sabotaged by someone less evolved during the day. That story worked, but at night, when my phone was silent, the apartment felt enormous. All the plants were still there, her favorite mug still sitting in the cabinet. I'd walk past her side of the bed and feel this hollow space open in my chest. Twitter validation is a very thin blanket, and the cold underneath it kept creeping through. About a month after she left, curiosity finally got the better of me. It was around 2 a.m. I was doom scrolling like usual, that familiar mix of anger and loneliness buzzing in my head without really thinking about it. I typed her name into Instagram. Her profile was private now, but Brian's wasn't. My finger hovered over his stupid profile picture, the one where he's smiling while holding that giant fish. I told myself I was just observing, gathering information, studying the enemy. I tapped the profile, started scrolling, same stuff as before. Mountains dog, random brewery photos. Then I saw her first photo of them together, posted about 3 weeks earlier, selfie on a hiking trail, somewhere bright sun in their faces. He had that same goofy smile, but Lena, she was laughing, not the polite smile she used to give in our photos. This was different, head tilted back, eyes crinkled shut, that full uncontrolled laugh. I realized with a weird jolt, I hadn't seen her laugh like that in over a year. My stomach twisted, but I kept scrolling. Next photo. Her sitting on the floor in front of a TV controller in her hands-focused expression, while playing a game, his dog lying across her lap. She was wearing some old, oversized college hoodie. The caption said, "She finally beat the boss fight, so proud of her." Another photo, 2 slightly burned homemade pizzas sitting on a kitchen table. Caption: her first attempt at cooking dinner. A for effort. The posts were normal, painfully normal. No dramatic oppression narrative, no sinister patriarchal scheme, just 2 people living a regular, quiet life together. They weren't analyzing the gender politics of pizza toppings. They weren't pausing their game to critique cultural symbolism. They were just existing, and she looked happy, not performatively happy, not intellectually validated, just peaceful. The kind of happiness I used to insist she could only achieve inside our enlightened little bubble. The kind I apparently never actually gave her for years. I believed I had saved her, and now there I was, sitting alone in a silent apartment at 3 in the morning, scrolling through photos of the love of my life, smiling with someone else realizing something horrible. The whole conflict was never feminism versus patriarchy. It was something much simpler. A controlling, arrogant person versus a kind, normal one. My face when I realized I wasn't the liberator. My face when I realized I was the cage.